$1,000 may not turn into 100,000 very quickly, but it can turn into 10,000 or 20,000 pretty fast.
Today I sit down with George of CryptosRUs.
The worse the macro conditions get, the more favorable it's going to get for Bitcoin.
As he shares his strategy to 20x his money in crypto in 2025.
It feels to me like the next Solana. I realistically think XRP will be between dollars. That is the next top.
Watch today's whole video if you want an edge investing in crypto. You do not want to miss this alpha.
I've said something before, and I think it's controversial because most people still don't believe it, but I think the only way true altcoin season will happen is if...
Like the video right now to support me, and let's start. And for perspective, about a year ago, Bitcoin's price was around $40,000, $50,000, I believe. I could have predicted, we were predicting, Bitcoin would be over $100,000 by now. The year's not over. We have more room to go. I could not have predicted, nor could have anybody, Trump getting into office, global trade war, all these things happening. Yet Bitcoin's price is still high. So what are the key factors that are driving Bitcoin's price up?
I think for the first time in Bitcoin's history, Bitcoin is actually seen as a real store of value and a hedge against inflation. I mean, both of us, we've been in the space for a long time. We've been hearing about these things, especially from the Bitcoin maxis, for a long time. And these are things that we wanted to actually see play out. And this is the first time, I think, the first cycle where we are actually seeing that. We're actually hearing about companies and institutions and even countries converting from gold to Bitcoin. Like previously, that's just unheard of. I mean, obviously, we now have a Bitcoin reserve in the US. Many other countries are establishing that. We have states that now have Bitcoin reserves. And we have, of course, more institutional adoption. Even the banks like Jamie Dimon's JP Morgan, he has capitulated. He's like, now anyone could go into a JP Morgan bank and buy Bitcoin. I mean, just think about how far we have come. And I think these are the reasons why the cycle has gone according to plan for some and unexpectedly for some, because of all these things that are happening that we only fantasize about in previous cycles, and now it's actually happening right in front of our eyes. So it's amazing if you think about it.
And all that speaks to the demand. Even if we look at just what's happening in the world, like whether you support it or not, it's like Donald Trump chaos, how much things he's changing. Do you feel it's like, okay, big money doesn't feel they can put money in bonds, let's say, because they got uncertainty, not safe right now. Stock market, we don't know because these tariffs that Trump has on and has off. It's like gold and crypto are like the last kind of thing that big money can at least put a piece into for a little protection, maybe.
Yeah. Whether you like Trump or not, one thing he has changed vastly is the crypto environment, the regulations around crypto in America in a big way and forever, I believe. If you just look at all the SEC cases that has been dropped against every major exchange, every platform, there were dozens against projects themselves, all dropped, and they're starting over with the new chair, Paul Atkins, who had advised for crypto projects before. Seems like he has an open mind. He's conducting roundtable discussions with industry leaders, like some of the biggest leaders in the space and Web2 space and financial space. So it's not just with Web3 projects. I mean, these are things that never happened before. I mean, previous cycle, we always had to deal with Gary Gensler and all the projects in America. They were hiding. They didn't want people to know that they were in the United States. There were so much fear and scrutiny. No one wanted to do anything, and there was no innovation at all. And now, under a new administration, things have changed vastly. Now, projects are proud to be American because that's actually what we want. We want innovation to stay here, right? And we don't want people or leaders or projects to leave because they're afraid of being sued by the SEC. So I think that's the biggest change, I think, going forward is the favorable regulations that are being created and the frameworks that are still being worked on. These things will help push crypto in a big way, not only in the US, but worldwide. And yeah, so I think that's going to be big.
Do you still think that Bitcoin's going to top out this cycle end of the year, maybe beginning of next year? And why do you think that?
Yes and no. I personally think that the old 4 year cycle is over, meaning that we get this blow off top and then everyone decides to dump and then we go down 80% and head into crypto winter for about 2.5 years, right? And then we start slowly recovering up until the next halving event, and then we start skyrocketing for like a year and a half. I believe that old cycle is over. Now, granted, we will always have a 4 year cycle or some sort of 4 year cycle because of the halving event that happens every 4 years. So the next one is 2028. But I do believe because of the institutional adoption, I mean, you have tens of billions in ETFs. BlackRock themselves they're the largest holder of Bitcoin behind Satoshi. You got Saylor and Strategy, of course, and you got many others like Metaplanet now. They continue to DCA and DCA and DCA even during the dark times, and I don't think they're going to stop. So if you think about it, with so much of the supply being held by these big boys, I just don't see the same kind of collapses as before. Now, that doesn't mean we can't correct. That doesn't mean we can't say like end of this year or the first half of next year. It doesn't mean that we can't hit some kind of top and then correct down like we have seen. We have seen 30% drops. There's no reason why we can't see something like that happen, or maybe it's even a little bit more drastic. Let's say it could go 50%, but I think we don't have to wait like the same number of years or months before we start seeing recovery and all that. I think we just quickly recover back and then continue forward. So it's like a forever stair step going forward. That's how I think it's going to play out from here on out.
Bitcoin's matured. It's a teenager, and the big money's treating it like that. Um,
Yeah.
my question to you is, okay, if Bitcoin's price, let's just say, just gets to $140,000 by end of this year, that was my middle base case prediction, from 2 years ago. To me, that would say like, okay, we're not necessarily going to have a bear market in 2026 because at worst, Bitcoin corrects maybe back down to 90, whatever. People are buying Bitcoin now with the understanding volatility is baked in. We know what we're buying now. There's an education aspect. So, what is your Bitcoin price prediction by top of cycle?
I think it's the same that I've told you about before and I publicly stated. I think Bitcoin's going to end up being between 200 and 250,000. That is the next top. And then yeah, we could correct from there. And think about it, if we did like a 50% correction from 200, that's like right around here, right? That would be around $100,000. And I could see how something like that could happen. But yeah, I think that's where it is. But I've been hearing more, we always get these like crazy speculative guesses on where Bitcoin could go. A lot of them are based on charts or Fibonacci levels and, like metrics like MBRV and the rainbow chart, stuff like that. But I've been hearing more geared towards like the US, the health of the US, especially what's going on with bonds now, like the collapse of the bond market, things like this. If Wall Street, if traders, big hedge funds, if they truly start recognizing Bitcoin as alternative, like a commodity alternative to fiat, the worse the macro conditions get, the more favorable it's going to get for Bitcoin. So I've been hearing and seeing a lot of people make predictions about the collapse of the bond market and the US having a real hard time later this year borrowing any money. And if that happens, then I could certainly see the narrative of, this hedge against inflation for Bitcoin carrying it much higher than 200, 250,000. And that's where the predictions of like 500,000, 600,000 come in. It seems like it's unlikely, like within the next 6 months, that we can go up 5x or 6x from here. But there's a lot of money out there, so who knows?
And I will say that, like, I see this theory on Twitter. Donald Trump just announced recently that tariffs for iPhones are back on 25%. Crazy in the sense that if that does happen, if Trump really wants that, we won't see any progress notably on that until after Trump is out of office. That takes years, yet the tariffs are here now. I saw a theory that Trump is doing whatever he can to put money back in the bond market. He wants to take it out of stocks. If people see bonds as a less risky thing than the stock market. All that to me just says uncertainty. And that's good for Bitcoin. That's good for gold. Is that bad for altcoins this cycle, this chaos?
Uh, yes, unfortunately. That's why we haven't really seen altcoins gain a lot of strength. Besides a few exceptions, for the most part, alts are still down, vastly down, even compared to our previous high back in December, January, when Bitcoin first hit 109,000. You could see where like ETH was, I think at the time, like above 3,000, or maybe it was above 3,500, and Sol was at like 250, and XRP was close to like $4 or something. And these are like the biggest altcoins, right? And they're definitely trailing, despite the fact that Bitcoin has broken its all-time high and has gone higher. And if you look at like the mid caps and the small caps, even the memes, they're nowhere close to even a January high, and most are nowhere close to their 2021 high. So yeah, to answer your question, if the macro conditions get worse and it drives more people to Bitcoin and causes Bitcoin to appreciate and skyrocket, I think it will hurt the alts. It will hurt them a lot. Um, Now, if it's not that scenario where it's just like things are just like so, they're not great, and Bitcoin continues to go upwards, I still think that the alts will gain momentum and a lot of liquidity will still come out and go into them. But with all the bad and negativity and the uncertainty out there, I just don't see them really helping alts at all. But I will say one thing though, some of these alts, the big caps, will get their own ETFs, which I think will help them quite a lot. Like, for example, Solana, XRP, and Cardano, Doge, some of these that will get their ETFs. I think that's a little different. That will help them in a way, but others probably not so much.
So, how do you think altcoin season happens this year? Like, what metrics are you looking at?
I've said something before, and I think it's controversial because most people still don't believe it. But I think the only way true altcoin season will happen is if memes blow up once again. That's where the money is going to come from, because obviously right now, and there's many news reports and metrics that show that institutions are leading the Bitcoin rally. The bull run is definitely led by institutions, which is why Bitcoin dominance continues to go up and all dominance continues to go down. But because of that, previous altcoin seasons happened when Bitcoin had a blow off top and money flows out and goes in alts. Because retail is not really buying Bitcoin, it's the long-term holders and institutions. So I don't see the same kind of money flowing out of, Bitcoin into the alts. So then where's the money going to come from? Well, I mentioned the ETFs. So some of the big caps will get money from the ETFs. So that's great. But the remaining ones will probably be dependent on memes, because if memes go up and they have blow off tops, what happens, right? The money goes into another meme and another meme and another meme. And who also benefits from that? The chains that the memes are residing on, right? And the infrastructure that supports it, like all the like Pump.Fun, and many others, the infrastructure that supports the DEXs where they reside on and get traded, And I'm sure that, there's lending markets and other DeFi markets that will support the memes in a big way. So I think they will all get a ton of liquidity. And sure, some people will probably come to their senses and take profit from their latest meme and maybe put it into like an alt that they like, maybe an RWA or AI or something like that. But the money has to be generated from somewhere. And I think the easiest way for retail to do that is with memes, especially since memes are now declared non-securities. In the US, that's a
Crazy.
big deal.
Crazy
Yeah.
compared to where we came from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that Trump and his wife Melania both have memes, just take a second to think about that. Anyone can create a meme. You and I can create a meme. I mean, there's no worry as long as you promise no one's gonna make money, but anyone can create a meme and say it's just for fun. So I think I said a lot, but to wrap up, yeah, I think the money is going to flow from memes into alts, and that's how we're going to have a true altcoin season. So,
What three emerging altcoins do you think are showing potential for long-term growth today?
um, Solana is one of them. I think that's pretty obvious. A lot of people know about Solana. It's been around for a while, and if you look at the metrics are amazing. And you could argue, well, maybe it's all due to memes. Regardless, metrics is metrics. You look at volume and liquidity and transactions and anything else in between. Solana's dominating, even more so than Ethereum. So I think Solana will pick up itself once again, especially when memes get hot, and they will continue forward. So that's number one. Number two, a lot of people will be surprised that I say this, but I will say XRP. Um, and that's mostly due to the changed landscape. They have gotten the SEC off their back now. They have a latest report, I think, $100 billion war chest. They're trying to buy Circle right now for USDC. They offered them $11 billion. That shows you how rich they are. And you got to give them a lot of credit that they fought the SEC. They fought Gary Gensler tooth and nail and won. And they were probably the only people that can do it because they had that war chest. They spent $200 million to fight the SEC. But now that everything's over and the landscape in the US has changed, it's going to be very favorable for them to really expand and grow their offerings in the US and worldwide. So I think they will be a dominant powerhouse. And there's a lot of financial institutions that already declared that they're utilizing XRP Ledger and they're trying to grow it as well, but mainly because they have so much money. They just really can't fail at this point. And I think going to stable coins is very smart for them too. So that's something else. Now that's two. The third one that I now come to love is Sui. I really do like Sui. I think, unfortunately, they recently just had this hack happen with their biggest liquidity provider and DEX Cetus, which is unfortunate. And unfortunately, we still hear about these kind of massive hacks that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But luckily, the team did identify it, trying to recover it, and they're moving past it, right? But outside of that, I've attended their own conference, their base camp twice now, once last year, one this year, and I can see the excitement, like the developers there, the people that are in attendance. Raul Paul showed up this year, and it feels to me like the next Solana. They had tremendous growth last year and this year, but um, I think there's a lot more to go, and they have great infrastructure support. Wallets like Phantom have come to support them, and I just see a lot of potential there. So the third one is Sui for me.
George, I have one more question. This one's a little degen, so stay with me here. But these are questions that normies that are coming into the cycle that are asking today. But if I have $1,000 and I want to turn that into $100,000, is that realistic to do by the end of the year? Or what's the max I can go and how do I do it?
I don't think it's realistic. And if you're trying that hard to do 100x in 6 months, you're probably going to make a mistake. Um, Remember, I think it was last, maybe two interviews ago, you asked me the same question, and I said, if I want to make max amount of money, I probably put the $1,000 into Pepe, and it turned out to be the right move. I don't know if it was the best mover, but it literally did go up like at least 20 or 50x, something like that. It went up crazily. Um, so I think the best chance to make an enormous amount from $100,000 is still a meme or memes. But the problem is, we just got done talking about the macro environment and so forth, and how alts are not doing all that well. So right now we're seeing like brief stints of like alts and memes pop up. But unless we get that true altcoin season, memes may stay stagnant for a while. And plus, we have so many of them out there. There's thousands that are created every single day, and maybe one in a million pops off, right? So if you're trying that hard to make that much money that fast, that's why I think you're going to make mistakes. So if I was completely new, I had no idea about anything. Um, I would still put vast majority of it into one of the three that I mentioned, because I think they have the most potential, and then just read the landscape, right? I think Solana will get hot again because of the memes, and then you just have to see which ones do well. To be honest, I have not kept up with a lot of the new memes, right? I've heard of ones that are somewhat big, but there's always new ones every single day, so I don't have like a hot new meme pick. But what I do know is there will always be new ones, and the current ones, even like someone like Pepe, is down like at least 50% versus their high. And we're talking about a big cap meme. And you look at others like Whiff or Bonk, and even some of the other ones that that are new. I don't even know, like Bohm or Chill Guy or like Goat, SPX, whatever these are, they're all down like 50 or 60 or 70% off from their previous high. So you could argue you don't even have to put your money into new meme. You could just put money into the existing memes. But again, the landscape has to get better before you can make some great money with them. So I would say, I would stick with one of the three that I mentioned. And of course, Bitcoin. You can't ignore Bitcoin. Although, a lot of people will always ignore Bitcoin because it's so big in their opinion. It's so expensive now. So a lot of people think, well, I have $1,000 in Bitcoin. There's no way I can make a good amount of money in there. Short term, probably not as much as you would hope, but long term, you wait another cycle, it's a 10x, 20x. So $1,000 may not turn into 100,000 very quickly, but it can turn into 10,000 or 20,000 pretty fast. And it's still faster than any other investment out there if you're looking at stocks or bonds or anything like that. So I don't know. I said a lot. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah, I would put some into Bitcoin and a majority of it into those three that I mentioned, and then read the landscape. If the landscape gets better and memes are hot again, then I would divert a lot of that money into memes. So that's what I would do.
Well, I totally relate to what you're saying because if, I would only put money into memes that I was willing to lose, maybe 10%, and that's crazy to some, but 10% max of the portfolio, that's your effort, part of the portfolio could turn into a win, probably going to lose it, 10% max, maybe 5%. But just going off the quality ones, XRP has survived many cycles, never been a better landscape. Solana has survived multiple cycles. SUI has a great team, great fundamentals. Let's just take XRP. Price
Mhm.
outlook for XRP in 2025? And let me preface by saying, well, let's just say Bitcoin has at least a 1.5 to 2x maybe left in it. Ethereum could be 3 to 4x with XRP around $2 today. 5x? $10 per coin? Is that possible?
Yeah, I think so. I realistically think XRP will be between $8 to $10. And considering it's 250, so that's only a 4x. But I certainly think that's possible. I think there are people that think it could go higher than that. Um, but yeah, I think that's actually pretty conservative, $8 to $10. I think, and they have, once they get their ETFs, and there'll be many, I think that's going to help bring a lot more money into the space. So yeah, I think $8 to $10 is conservative estimate for a top.
George, I want to bring you back in 4, 6 months, revisit some of this stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Links for all your stuff down below. Final thoughts for the Altcoin Daily audience.
Um, continue to continue to listen to these guys. Aaron Austin, they produce really good content. I really do enjoy your content. And I think overall, all of us are trying to educate and uh, make people stay first of all, and not get flooded out or feared out in the market whenever there's volatility. Make people understand that investing is a long-term thing, and hopefully we bring some value by also talking about some of the new alts and stuff like that. But overall, I think the most important thing is to just be patient. We go through a lot of these cycles. We go through a lot of these times where there's up and downs, right? And it's funny because I do a lot of live streams and I see people like come in and get depressed and stuff like that. But it's when like Bitcoin's in the 90s or even $100,000, right? It seems like people have a short attention span and forgot that last year during the halving event, we were at like 40 or 50,000 Bitcoin, right? And then you go back a year before that, we were at like 15,000 for our low. We have come a long way so fast, but because we live in a moment and we look at the price every single minute and every single day, we get caught up in these short-term volatility moments. So the biggest takeaway is just be patient, continue to do what you're doing, which is holding and DCAing into Bitcoin and your favorite alts, and that's the winning strategy.
Great perspective. This is why I subscribe to you. Thanks, man.